going on, guys? It is Tom Radigan, and today is a very special video. I have a contributor on this channel who we are going to comment on and just talk about this album, the Bill Withers albums, the two albums. Here is Nathaniel Ahart, and yeah, welcome on, Nathaniel. I'm really happy.
Hey man, thanks for having me on, Tom. It's an absolute pleasure. We were already talking before this,
Yeah.
having some great conversation about music, and honestly, I just can't wait to talk about Bill Withers. And I just want to say, first off, I think Bill Withers is one of the not only one of the best, but one of the most underrated singer-songwriters of all time. And just to give you context, how much I love "Just as I Am," I actually have it above Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan. When it comes to all-time records. So I really do love that album, and I can't wait to talk about. There's so much material to go over just on these two albums alone.
Oh yeah, and like I think one thing that we can admit is because we both have admitted to ourselves about this that like we haven't listened to any other Bill Withers albums. Those are the only
You're right.
albums we've listened to, and those two albums alone, I think, already show how great of a songwriter he was. And I think from what I know about Bill Withers is he has 6 signature tracks, which is Ain't No Sunshine, Grandma's Hands, Lean on Me, Use Me, and then 2 songs that later in the 70s, which was, Lovely Day, and then in 1980, Just the Two of Us. So those are probably his 6 best known songs that have been covered like plenty of times. I mean, Ain't No Sunshine, I think has been covered over 250 times. I've heard something like that. And same with like on Me has been covered a lot. The thing that I think is really great, and I mentioned it in a video that I did about Just As I Am, and I wrote 2 album reviews already about both of those albums on Superfan Music. But what I love about him is just that this is a guy I found out who like started later in life. He was, this prodigy as a kid, as somebody like maybe Elton John or Garth Hudson, or somebody who was doing music since they were a kid, like Annie Lennox as well. But like this guy, he started out in the military, and I think he has a really like interesting story of he started out with a stutter as a kid, and he always felt like kind of stupid in some ways, and I think he always it held him back from stuff, as what he said in life. And he joined the Marines, I think, because he wanted to feel special. He wanted to really stand out and do something. And the thing that's crazy to me is he didn't start doing music until 67 or 68. He was like in his late 20s. And then he had an album that came out like 5 or 4 years later. It's like, what?
Dude, no, go ahead.
What were you gonna say?
Well, no, I just think to that point, because I believe he was like 33.
Yeah,
when Just As I Am came out. And I think it really shows like just how much, because obviously with debut albums it's hard to have a great one right off the bat. There's a few artists obviously like Jimi Hendrix, who I think is like the greatest debut album of all time. But I think what Bill Withers had going for him was this sense of maturation in his lyrical content that I feel like if he had started any younger, he might have not had that perspective that he did going into this album.
That is such a great way to put it, because I think the thing that's cool about him in some ways too is that like when you hear a song like Ain't No Sunshine, you think it's got to be written by somebody who's been studying music all their life and studying chords and all that. And for a guy who really didn't even know how to play the guitar that well, like he claims in a documentary that the first guitar he ever owned was 1970, and that came out. And that was a year before the album was recorded.
Holy shit.
Like 1970s, it was the first time I ever owned a guitar. And like that, and that's crazy, because he would have been like 32 at that point. And like he was saying, it always fascinated him. Like he sang in the shower, like, but he never sang live in like at all when he was a kid, he claimed. And I think what's cool about this album is too, is of what you said, like, had he started out younger, he might have not had like the experience. But what I think is interesting too is he claims himself that he didn't have as much life experience as someone might have had at that age. Being in the in the military and stuff like that. He didn't have like as much relationships as maybe somebody did. A lot of speculation about love was kind of in that. Like he talks about too, like with Ain't No Sunshine, it wasn't about a specific woman, but he claims any woman he was with before that claims that song's about them. And he says in some ways they're all right, they like it is kind of all about them. But it's also the thing that's so interesting is he based it on a movie which was Days of Wine and Roses, which was like so interesting that he claimed that he based it on like the rocky relationship of those characters in the movie, and just the way he comes along with that voice. I mean,
Oh, such an underrated vocalist too, and so identifiable, even if you don't know who he is.
That was the first when I was thinking of thoughts to say while I was driving to work today of what I can say about Bill Withers that I haven't already said was he has a voice that just, when you listen to a song, it's him. And I don't think you can say that about a lot of artists. I think the artists you can say that about are Elvis and Sinatra. Like there's not a lot of artists I
There
feel
might be a few more.
oh, there's a few more like Bob Dylan, of course, but like there's just like, but that's not like I feel like common, that
Sure,
like
sure.
that there's a voice that just stands out that it's there. They weren't copying anybody, like
Right.
Withers. When you hear that voice, it's like when you hear it, it's like wait a second, this guy started when he was in his late 20s, early 30s when he got his sound down. And he wasn't like he didn't play music all his life, like he didn't play guitar all his life, he didn't sing in public. Like, and it's like, how is that even possible? Like he's like you gotta wonder, like, is he like kind of like toning it down? Is he not like bragging? I mean, that's crazy to me. That it's like is he just like not giving himself enough credit? Because I just think that's insane. How can somebody be that talented but not hone their craft since they were 5 years old? Because
And
that's what I feel like we're taught to believe by a lot of artists that I've been doing this since I was a kid, and all that.
and,
Yeah.
and obviously some of them have. I mean, Stevie Wonder was signed to Motown as little Stevie Wonder when he was like
Oh,
11
yeah,
or something.
absolutely.
But I think the thing, speaking of his voice, I mean, not only is his baritone voice just so pure, it's also just crazy like how much control he has over it, and you can hear that on a few songs specifically, which we will get into, and I'll talk
Yeah.
even more about it. But like it's really hard to just have that much natural talent and understanding of your mechanism so much, because I've had some vocal training, and I know that I'm not necessarily the most expert vocalist when it comes to like all the sort of breathing techniques. I work on it a little bit, but I don't have the best control that I could have. But then you hear someone like Bill Withers, who you said didn't have any training at all, and it just comes out so naturally. I just absolutely adore his voice, and as we said, nobody sounds like him really.
And he considers himself more of a songwriter than a singer, and I get that of why he says that. But like it's like Bill, don't cut yourself short.
Yeah.
Come on, I mean, but the songs too, because of course we'll go more into it, but when there's they all have something to say. It's not like I love when artists don't have every song about love, or like all about like, oh baby I need you now, or like, oh baby I love you. Like, I'm glad that there are artists that can do songs about just regular topics. But like I love, because when I was a kid I thought, oh, every song has to be about love because that's all you hear. And then you realize, oh wait, no, it doesn't have to be about that. And like there are certain songs that of course have a lot of romance in them. And I think it was cool that like songs that like he wasn't married before, so he didn't have like experience of a married couple, like especially on the song Better Off Dead, like he didn't, it's like such a rock about a rocky marriage. Like the guy wasn't married before, he couldn't, like he had no idea what a marriage would have been like, from personal experience. But it's like he was speculating these things. It was all about finding stuff out that like what made him curious. It was really like what he was just doing this to do this. He wasn't doing this to be competitive. He was doing this because he had something to say. And what also I think shows how like humble he is just to like the title alone, Just As I Am. And
Yeah,
so the cover relates with that, where it was shot at, because he was working as an assemblyman, where he was working on toilets. Like that's what he was, I think, he
it's
designed the toilet
crazy.
seats. And that photo is him on his lunch break with his like
The
yeah,
lunchbox, yeah.
yeah, the yeah, like the metal lunchbox. And it's just like he's by the brick wall and all that. And like that album cover alone is like, wait, he did that on his like break. It's like, wow, this guy really was like, oh my god, this guy's something else. Because like everybody, in some ways, I feel like not everybody, but there's a lot of artists that were trying to hide who they truly were, so
Right.
they feel like, oh, I have to be this certain way in order to be successful, or for girls to think I'm a sex symbol, you know, and stuff like that. Like he didn't give a shit, you know,
No.
he,
And
he didn't care.
and it was just his songs. I think the best way I can describe it is just so humanistic. You know, and obviously we'll talk about some of them. I just feel like his insight was so penetrating to the human experience, even if he himself hadn't experienced those specific things. They feel so beyond relatable, and something anybody can really understand or empathize with, and that's really hard to pull off, I think, for any songwriters, but especially considering that he hadn't, as you said, been through a lot of that stuff himself.
Well, now I gotta ask you, because there's two covers on that album, which was Everybody's Talking, which was the Harry Nilsson song, and then of
Let it
course
be.
the Beatles. Yeah, of course the Beatles Let It Be. What do you think of those covers alone?
I love him, and I don't usually say that, especially about Beatles stuff, but like the thing that's so great about what Bill Withers does, he kind of takes a more funky and soulful approach to them, and really makes them his own. Obviously, I'd have to say the Harry Nilsson version of Everybody's Song is better, and of course, Let It Be is one of the greatest Beatles songs, you could
Yeah,
say.
of course.
So, but still, he's able to spin it in a way that it really does feel like it doesn't feel like necessarily a Beatles song when I listen to his cover of Let It Be, you know, and I think that's probably the best compliment you can give an artist, especially doing a cover, because
Yeah.
you know sometimes when there's a lot of covers on albums, like I was just listening to Sting's "Nothing Like the Sun" and there was a cover of Little Wing. I'm like,
Oh,
why? As you can see from my back, I'm like, why is this on here? Like nobody should do the song except Hendrix. Even that's just
yeah.
2 minutes long. Just stop, guys, stop.
Right.
But here it's like, wow, like he actually legitimately made what I think to be one of the best Beatles covers of all time.
Well, I think I wouldn't go that far for me, but also too, I have to say I haven't heard a lot of Beatles covers itself. Like,
Mm.
I like, you know, I've heard, I in some ways like love Stevie Wonder's "We Can Work It Out." I still,
No, that might be my favorite
yeah,
Beatles cover.
that's my favorite Beatles cover, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's as good as that, but I agree with you when he makes it his own. And I think it's like when I hear it, I don't like, I have to think a while. Wait a second, this is Let It Be. And I remember like I was playing it to my dad, because like you hear it and it sounds like completely different. Like you don't know what the heck to expect of it. And then like my dad, like halfway through the first verse, he's like, he's staring and he's just like making this face, and then he's just like, stand still. Like he's about to go like out the door to get groceries, and he's walking out the door, and I just see him standing still, and I know he's figuring it out. Like he's like it's getting like he's just like he's trying to put the pieces together, and he goes like, he covered "Let It Be." Like that's like the first thing he said to me. Like yeah, like that's like he said that like right after, and I said yeah, on the first album. And like I will say like too, like because when you do a cover, you know, you got to make it your own, because when
Yeah.
you make it sound just like the record, you're not adding anything new. You have to add something new to the table. You really do, in order to make it really successful. So when he does that, I'll be honest, like, you know, when I first heard it, you know, I liked it and all that, but it grew on me more and more, and sometimes songs just grow on you more and more. And I heard that, and honestly, it's like when I hear it, it's like almost like nothing else matters. It's like I'm just like silent, almost like, I don't know if you know the Seinfeld episode where the guy loves the Eagles song "Desperado."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that when I'm listening to it, and also too, it's so weird when it comes to me with emotions with stuff, but I feel like in some ways I almost want to fucking cry when I hear it, because
Wow.
just like I mean, I think that song alone, even when the Beatles do it, I almost want to cry because it's just such a good, because it's such a heartful song. You know how Paul McCartney wrote it about his mother who's been dead for years and visiting her in the dream, and it's just such a beautiful song alone. And for Bill Withers to bring more of a funk, but even like kind of maybe a gospel vibe to it
Yeah, yeah.
more than Paul McCartney could do. Something more that Paul McCartney couldn't really do that much with it. And maybe it has to be like with the type of richness Bill Withers had with his voice. But
Mhm.
the way like the organ comes in and the way he just keeps going in on it, like the hand claps too, like it's not like when I mean it's like it's not professional in a way of like it sounds completely polished. It sounds like just like a song he liked to do, and it's just like let's record it. It might not be a perfect cover or a perfect version, but let's do it anyway. And that's how it feels. Like I said, I couldn't consider one of my favorites. Like I asked because our friend Paul, he's a huge Beatles fan, and Paul was saying that he likes the version because he likes, Withers' voice, but the same thing too. He wouldn't call it his favorite Beatles cover. It's not that at all.
Mhm.
And but like also too, it's like I feel like you two got to give it like credit too. It's like it was, even though this is a great first album as we talk about it, it was his first album too. So it's of course it's not going to be perfect. It's
It's
not.
not perfect, but I think it comes pretty damn
Oh,
close.
exactly.
And that's the thing that's so great because like I actually wanted to talk about how I found this album because
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I know as much as disdain I have for this magazine nowadays with a lot of their placements and pandering sometimes, I I knew it made the Rolling Stones top 500 greatest albums, and I have been going through all of them just to kind of educate myself on everything that they have there. And I was going to listen to something else that night, I think, but I wasn't in the mood for it. I was like, you know what, Bill, and I like listening starting with the artist's debut album, so I was like, oh, this is a debut album. I hear this Bill Withers guy's great. No, I know Ain't No Sunshine, Lovely Day, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I heard that orchestration, that funky orchestration kick on in Harlem,
Oh,
I was just
yeah.
like,
Yeah. Some.
what is this? Just such a great the Saturday night in Harlem,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just the way he describes all the characters, because not only is it just funky as hell, but the lyrics, just his storytelling, even if it's something as simple as describing the people in Harlem on this very hot and steamy night. I mean, it's just so infectious. I love the line where he's like saying, what is it? Sunday morning here in Harlem. Now everybody's just all dressed up. The heathen folk are just getting home from the party, and all the good
Yeah.
folks just got up. It's like just so
Yeah.
brilliant. I just absolutely love it, and just the way like it like the key changes like on every
Oh,
time he
yeah.
says Saturday night in
Yeah.
a
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Harlem.
Yeah.
It's
And
like, oh man,
uh,
what a great intro track. I mean, if this is even the best song on the album, but man, is it a good one.
doesn't it sound like in some ways, and maybe this was already, maybe that's why I know it, but doesn't it sound like that could have been an opening to a musical? Like you can see the imagery now of like people in Harlem just dancing to that song and just like bring it, because when it picks up more, when he like goes even heavier with Saturday night in Harlem, like you could just really see like a bunch of people just coming out,
Mhm.
dancing musical number and all that. Which in some ways, if they ever did, if there's already been a play about it, then like that's great. But like I could see that being a play, like
I can see it being an opening to a movie like in
oh,
the city or
absolutely.
something. I think that would be so cool. Just
What a great way that it's an opening of an album too,
yeah, and it really sets you into this world that he's building,
and
which I think is so brilliant.
I find it crazy too that it was not that it's not a great song, but that it was the A side when Ain't No Sunshine was the B side.
Really,
Yeah,
that's shocking to me. Wow,
because
that's crazy.
great Harlem is, it's like when you hear Ain't No Sunshine, which happens to be the second track,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, it's like when you hear it, it's like, this is probably one of the best songs ever written. And like I've said this before, and it's like this guy, from a guy who doesn't have that much musical training, this song is just so great, like, the way the guitar works, the way his
Mhm.
voice is just so somber, And like the thing I found out after really like researching this album is that Stephen
Yeah.
fucking Stills plays on this album. Not just that song, but on the whole entire album. I mean, that says something too of musicians who really believed in this guy. You know, this guy
Yeah.
doesn't go anywhere. This guy wasn't, you know, it was his first album. Nobody knows who the hell he is.
And
And they're like, they're taking a chance on him, you know?
and you look at who produced it, Booker T. Jones
T.
from
Jones.
Booker T and the MGs, you
And I
know?
heard he's not on the album or like he's not credited at all. But I heard from a video that Graham Nash was even at the sessions too, which I guess
Really?
makes sense considering, you know, with Steven Stills and all that.
Right.
But they were all encouraging him that like, you know, don't like you are good, you know, you are, you know, you know, like these
That's one word for it.
yeah. No, and like when these musicians are telling you that, because it's like it kind of even like where I'm about to go with this, like he talks about with Ain't No Sunshine, there's like the third verse where he does where he says I know
26 times.
I was gonna say that too. 26 times he
Yeah.
said that song. And so you probably know the story that he wanted to do more of a verse with that. And
Hmm.
and he was
I
talking
don't
to
know if I did.
because he was stuttering and all that, and he didn't like, sometimes he had to like kind of really think before he, you know, was writing lyrics, so he was like trying to come up with something, so he was just using it as a placeholder, you know, when he was showing it to the musicians. And Steven Stills, Booker T, all of them were like, keep it. They're like, keep it the way it is, because like instead, and like he was saying, you know, these guys all were, you know, like these well-known, successful musicians. So if they're telling me to keep it, then
Mhm.
I'm just gonna keep it, you know.
And dude, just the breath control you have to get through I know 26 times.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it looks like at some points it sounds like he's almost running out of breath, but it doesn't sound like he breaks a sweat at all. And then he just the way he goes back, ain't no sunshine and she's
yeah.
gone. It's
And
like
the way and it's funny, like if you see my Bill Withers video where I do that, like where I talk about just as I am, like at the end, me and my friend, like I just saying like I know, and like I'm feeling like the whole breath like thing with me, like just, you know,
Mhm.
imitating it or just being like, and because the way he does it, and it's just like it's building, it's like it just keeps coming and coming and coming, and it's like, oh my god, you know,
And even like the sends of the code,
leave
like
the
he goes, I know, I know, I know, I
yeah,
know, I know,
yeah.
and I know, you know, it's like wow.
Young thing alone. I just, and also too, I mean, have you ever heard, I mean, like I said before that it's like Ain't No Sunshine's been covered over like 200 times.
Right.
And there was a version that Ed Sheeran did, and I gotta say, like, I love this. Just shows you how humble Bill Withers is, because he stopped doing albums in '85. That was the last time he ever did an album, and so he kind of retired from music. But every now and then he did events, and he did this event about stuttering, because Ed Sheeran was also a kid who he admitted that he stuttered as a kid, and so they like got together and did this concert back in 2015. And I remember this was when Stephen Colbert was first on, you know, taking after Letterman and all that. And so Bill Withers and Ed Sheeran, they're not the first guest, but they're like on like the first month or so of
Mhm.
his show and all that, or like the second month, something like that. And there's this great moment, and if it doesn't warm your heart, I don't know what does. Because where Ed Sheeran talks about, like, you know, I still stutter, like, because he was stuttering while he said that, or like stumbled, you know, his words. And Bill Withers just like pats him on the back, you know, once he does that. And when you see that, it's like, if that like doesn't make you like just like, oh, like just such a great moment there.
Yeah.
But like also too, Ed Sheeran covers "Ain't No Sunshine" on the show, and the way he does that, like where, and also too, like when he does the line, like I wonder this time where she goes, like wonder if she's gonna say anything, like nah nah, like just like, and the way he even emphasizes when, you know, Withers does like leave the young thing alone. And another thing I found out was that because I remember watching American Idol, you know, when it was, you know, when it was good. But I remember watching when the season with Adam Lambert, and Chris Allen was the one that won that year. And Chris Allen did Ain't No Sunshine. And apparently it got on the charts again. Like, you know, after he did that song,
Oh, wow.
it appeared on the Billboard charts. And so it kind of, yeah, so it made a comeback, almost like kind of as you could say the Kate Bush song "Running Up That Hill" has because of Stranger Things. But so it's interesting. I just always find it interesting when a nostalgic song that is considered a classic can make a comeback, and it just shows you how powerful that song is. And like I can't say it enough from a guy who just really like wasn't a professional, or like in his words or in his eyes, or he didn't see himself as like he couldn't figure out his talent right away. For him to have that be one of his first masterpiece, it's
Mm.
like that's unheard of. It's like it's just like God. I mean, that's like the top of the cake, really.
Right.
And then so I guess now going into like the third track, which is another big hit. I mean,
Oh my! I might even like this more than
I
Ain't No
know,
Sunshine. Yeah,
God,
it's
I remember this was before I even was really getting into Bill Withers. I mean, of course, I knew the hit songs and I knew Grandma's Hands, but I remember like Calta was actually bringing him up, and I'm like, "What about Grandma's Hands?" And we both are like, "Yeah." We're like frozen, like when
mm.
we're just like, "What a song!" Like when you hear that, it's like what did I just hear? Yeah, the humming, like just like like a very like church feel, which of course is about like his grandmother going to church and just like focusing on one aspect of somebody that you knew as a kid.
Right.
Yeah, and he claims that he out of all the songs he wrote, like there's a clip of him talking about it in '73 when he's performing, and he's talking about how he goes like that he considers himself mostly a songwriter, but he says out of all the things I've wrote, like this about this old lady is my favorite.
Dude, and it's just the thing. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier when it's talking about the level of maturity he brings and sensitivity he brings to the subject, and I think the storytelling doesn't get really any better than on here because I mean just the things that he says without having to say anything at all, like when like especially that second verse where he's like talking about her hands to the local unwed mother where
Yeah,
he
yeah. Oh, I love
basically
that line. It's my favorite.
right. He's like basically where she's saying, baby grandma understands. I know you really love that man.
Yeah,
It tells you everything you need to know about this situation without actually having to state it at all. Where this guy left her, he knocked her up, she's pregnant, having his kids, and she's still in love with him. But grandma understands everything and
yeah,
she's empathetic to and I feel like that level of songwriting, that amount of depth, that amount of subtext, that I mean, it is so hard to write a song that good and be able to say all those things without coming out explicitly and saying it. You just read between the lines, and I think it is so fucking brilliant. I honestly, this really is another lyrical masterpiece on this album. And then especially we're like talking about, Maddie, don't you whip that boy, or he's like
yeah,
talking
exactly. Yeah,
kind of recounting his own experience with his grandmother, who of course was born into slavery,
right.
and that was like a big part of the song too, and
And
just
and it ends too. Again, I don't have grandma anymore. Like that line.
oh,
It's just like,
and
oh
now
wow.
you're like, well, hopefully,
Yeah, and
they're
he goes like when I
back
get to heaven,
together.
now unfortunately because he's gone,
You know,
that like hopefully he found her hands, and all that.
it really is such a beautiful testament to
Yeah,
a loved one, and just basically captures the essence of a person
that's basically
just within
what
a
I
few
said
verses.
when I wrote my album review on that. That's basically sort of like how I said it, because it was just like, what a way to, really, talk about somebody you loved, and all that. And I also love the line too. I mean, every line in it is just great lyrics, but like Billy, when he just like, mentions his name, and all that, where
Yeah.
he like shows like really human to his audience, like Billy, don't you run so fast, might fall on a piece of glass, might be snakes there. And I just snakes in that grass. Yeah, it's just no. And like there's a great version of rest in peace Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah,
He's
yeah, Peter Travers, yeah.
yeah, no, and oh god, yeah. But and then now moving on to the fourth track, which I think might be one of my other favorite songs on this album,
Yeah.
which is Sweet Wyoming. Like, oh
So
my god. Like the way the guitar goes in, and like when you hear the guitar, you're like, oh, you can tell that's Steven Stills. Like you can tell that's Steven Stills' guitar.
Mhm.
But like the way his vocals go in and the way he emphasizes like "Sweet Winona rested in my arms," it's just like over and over again. It's like that's such an earworm for me. And,
Oh, dude,
yeah,
such an amazing, very extremely bright poppy melody that just gets stuck in your head. But just the way he's describing this intimate moment, it isn't anything really significant that's going on in the situation. He's
no,
just
no,
in the bed with her, and they like she gets up and he like turns on a light or something. But just the way he describes her, was weeping winds through weeping willows,
yeah,
sweet one knowing me rest. And it's as you said, it's such a earworm. And of course, when the keys come in, oh my goodness, such a great breakdown in the middle. It's just how can you not love this song? It's just
yeah.
absolutely
And then
beautiful.
when it ends with him keep saying that over and over again.
Sweet
So,
one know me resting.
oh God, and that's like one of my favorite probably moments of his soulful voice.
Yeah,
Of
sure.
showing off how soulful he is, and like that's like another song that maybe he didn't experience a woman, maybe he didn't have a woman like that, or maybe, but it's like he didn't need to, he was able to capture what
Tap into that.
love should be, and all that, because when you're young, and sometimes like when we write stuff about love, we might have not always felt that way personally. It's just out of speculation and all that. But sometimes speculation is the best thing, and all,
Mm.
because it's what we don't know. It's like the unknown. It's like the unknown sometimes is better than what we know, because we build this image, or we build up whatever in our head, and we have like this thing in our mind of what can it be, or like what, like how great can it be for us. And then once yeah, you hear that, it's like that's it. There's nothing else there, and I just I love it. And
No,
anything
brilliant.
else you got to say about the song? Anything else, or
No, not really. But I did want to ask you about "Do It Good."
yes,
What
yo,
I
we definitely talking about that. Yeah.
okay.
No, I was like, I'm ready. Like, I'm already like ready. Like to talk about that. I love. It's not, of course, you can't say that that's the best lyrics of the song, or as beautiful. It's not. You're giving me the look. I mean, no, of course not. But it's just so funny, and I think like just the melody itself, the rhythm is just like like really vibing, the backing vocals, but like even the way he just like uses like these cool phrases, like if you want to catch up on an eagle, I'm stumbling in with it, so I'm not gonna even try to say what he says. But even like fish was made for hooking and grits was made for cooking, like lines like that, it's just so cool, to just like have lines like that. And but like the introduction with him, speaking over, like where he goes like, if you've read it shows you his comedic side, like too. If you read the album, you know what my name is. What yeah. And then he goes like, when I tried to do this, Mr. Jones, Booker T, and he goes like, don't worry about it. Just do what you do and do it good, It's just like I like that shows you what it is, like what the whole point of it is. They're just telling him, just like, you know, don't worry, it's not going to be great. Just do what you do and try to, and do it as good as you can. That's really what they're saying.
But I do think so much of this album is great.
Oh yeah,
So to me, this track is a little bit of a head scratcher. I mean I could do without it.
really.
I think for what it is, it's like okay, but do we need this as an album track?
It's
You
it's
know what I mean?
it's a filler in some ways.
It most certainly is, and the do it good, it just
Yeah,
kind of annoys me.
it is a filler, but I think it shows because if you've seen him in interviews and seen like how he presented himself, it represents who he, because the whole point of a debut album is kind of introducing yourself to the public. And he really, I think in some ways has to like, I don't like, not to say that like I agree with this per se, but maybe it's more of like, because he's an older musician, he really, I think, is trying to make a good impression. And I think this song, even though it's not a, great, it's that you can't compare it to Ain't No Sunshine or Grandma's Hands or even Sweet Manomi, but you can say that it's showing his human side, it's showing his humor, it's showing that, this is who he is. This is, I'm not, it's like, I'm not gonna, if you're looking for, a Miles Davis, or if you're looking for a Sinatra, then think again. That's sort of like how I see it.
But I feel like I could get that out of a lot of the other songs. You know what I mean? Because I'm
Yeah,
like, I still feel like you get that.
exactly.
As I said,
Saying that.
it's an extremely humanistic album, and I don't know. I could cut this one off, quite frankly. But I'm glad you enjoy it though. That's cool and
Yeah,
everything.
no, I mean, there's really no song on this album that I really don't like. I will say the songs that I don't have as much of an opinion on, or I think of as like that are like my least favorite, I guess I would say, are songs like "Hope She'll Be Happier," "In My Heart," and
Ooh.
maybe even the Everybody's Talking version, and also "To Moanin' and Groanin'." Maybe are like my four songs that I wouldn't say are my favorite. I don't know, like what's your? I mean, you can go into detail on each of them if you have.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually have a lot to
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
on each track. But I was gonna say the thing first off, I don't think that there's any album that sounds like this, especially at the time. It's like folk soul, and I don't think, and I think that's another reason why I love this album so much. It's such a singular piece of work. I really haven't heard anything quite like it, and trust me, I've heard a lot of stuff, but nothing really sounds like Just As I Am. Even if you look at something like Hope She'll Be Happier, I just think it's simple lyrically, but I just think his vocal performance is so powerful. You feel the passion that he's talking about. He's embittered, but he really does hope for the best for this woman. I mean, just his soaring vocals, man. I think that's what does it. Very sparse. You just have the minimal instrumentals in there, but I think it works so well.
Yeah, I think it does too.
Yeah.
I do say I like that, like when you have a line like that just shows that, like, you might really care for a person, but you might just not be able to give them what they need. And in some ways, if you really love a person, you have to let them go. And that's kind of like the message in that
Mhm.
song for him. And I think it's just like, it's not like I said, it's not my favorite song, but it's like, he's got something to say with this. It's not like
Right.
this is an important message. This is not nothing to like kind of look across. You've got to like kind of listen to it. It's nothing to skip or anything. But yeah, no, I know it's kind of funny that like for you, like how Do It Good you feel like doesn't fit the album. For me, I know it's not the greatest song, but for me, I just like it makes more of an impact for me than Hope She'll Be Happier for some reason. And I think maybe
Mm.
because I feel there's already enough songs that have so much heart in them, which is funny, like no pun intended to In My Heart.
Yeah.
But like the song I gotta say, like probably I love the most too is I'm Her Daddy.
Yes, that's my favorite song.
Her Daddy, like is
Yeah,
how yeah,
another
that
masterpiece.
oh my god, like I hear that song and,
Wow.
and it's like I listened to it the first time, I'm like, okay, and then I listened to it again, I'm like, what is he saying? It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Then you gotta listen to the lyrics again, it's like, oh my god, like this is a deep song, like there's
Dude,
deeper than that.
dude, just the way the story unfolds too, like where he's like he wants, as you said, I think you said this in your video, like he wants to have this connection
Yeah,
with his daughter, but man, I'm just like going over the lyrics now. Um and he's like talking like, "Oh, how are you doing? I heard you had a daughter, 6 years old." You don't know that he's the father at the beginning,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I think is such a brilliant twist because it's a story that slowly reveals itself, and then you find at the end he has the picture, and it's like, wow. I mean, that is just
yeah.
such a powerful track and
Does
just
she show
brilliant, masterful
yeah,
storytelling once
I
again.
love it too. Does she show the picture to the babysitter? And then the way he just picks it up and see that man, that's my dad. It's just like, oh my god. Like, yeah. It's like, yes, Bill, yes.
Give me more, Bill.
Exactly.
Dude, this
Oh,
this
it's like
really it. And to say I like this more than like Ain't No Sunshine or Grandma's Hands, that could change obviously if I go back and listen to
Yeah,
it.
of course.
But that's what I have listed as my favorite track on my all time list. What's that?
No, I'm like, no, I totally see why. I mean,
No.
it's one of the most. I think it's the one of the essential tracks on it. You know.
Oh, absolutely, man. But I don't think either that is to discredit because I know you said you aren't as huge on it, but in my heart, man, I think that this is I think musically one of the most interesting songs on the album. Hear me out.
Yeah,
I think the way he plays with crescendos and decrescendos and it's just him and the guitar.
yeah,
It's yet again a very sparse song, but the way like he'll create these descending chord patterns that happen, and then he'll know when to pull back right at the perfect moment and just let loose vocally, and you latch on to every single word that he's saying because of the way the musicality is presented. That's why I think the song is so brilliant. It may not be as lyrically great as I'm Her Daddy or Grandma's Hands or anything like that, but it is just such a powerful exercise in control and I guess in some ways just how to latch your audience onto a song and just kind of string them along. And I don't mean that in a bad way because the song is just brilliantly a brilliant way to play with musical execution. I just absolutely adore it for
like
that.
it's definitely more like mundane, I guess, in some ways, and maybe like
Yeah.
not as, very simple as you said. Definitely not as sophisticated as the other songs on this album.
No, but I think impressive nonetheless because it's just he knew exactly how to play with the music and make it
Yeah,
that
the
effective.
music itself, I will say, actually, I will say that is sophisticated the way that comes about because it's not your normal song in that way. So it's sort of interesting how he has a lot of great lyrics on this album, but like that doesn't work yet. The melody, he's still able to have that be okay. It's still like
Yeah.
it's not like a complete like mess, and all that or train. It's not a train wreck at all. But yeah. But and
Right.
then what do you think of like moaning and groaning?
I think I love that one too. And obviously yet again we have another case where it may not be a lyrical highlight on the album, but it's just so funky. I don't know, man. I think I do love it. I have to go back and listen to it again. I was just listening again earlier, but not a bad song at all. Um, and I feel like musically it fits in very well with the kind of folk soul I was talking about. But
I'd say even too with that. I like as much as I like Do It Good. I think I kind of compare it to that in like lyrically, of the way the writing goes in it. It's more of like it's a fun song. It's a simple song. It's a
mhm,
song to just like not go too serious with it. It's like because it's not like every song on an album is serious. That doesn't always work. Like and especially for a debut album, you kind of got to sometimes show a mix of emotions, which is why I think definitely going into like the last track of this album is
heavy.
how do you like it's just like what a way to end it out, not just in a way to end an album but a debut album, like the first album
Involving.
that a song so dark, it's like after you hear it it's like who is this guy, or like what is this
Just
like
'cause I know.
the story. It's like who would have a song that's so dark about a relationship where it ends with killing, with not even saying the word better off, have he's been saying the whole song dead, just with the gunshot. Like, oh my god.
And this brings up an interesting point because lyrically, I think this is one of the most brilliant songs on the album.
Yeah.
But and I get what he was going for, but I think this album ends way too abruptly. If I had any like this isn't Desolation Row on Highway 61 Revisited. I will give it that. Which is maybe the lyrically the greatest song of all time. That's another discussion. But I just think that the way he sets up this guy, alcohol, he's like pawning off all their stuff. It just
My favorite lines from the song.
dude, no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I just feel like the way it ends, just that gunshot, it's like, oh, that's it? Like, okay, that's how we end the I just feel like and that's another reason why maybe I don't have this like rated higher just because of structural. I'm a big structural guy, so I feel like when I hear something like that, I'm like, really, like that's what you're going to give me for the end, and it is a great song, but I just feel like it ends way too abruptly. Though I get what he was doing on this
What
track,
I
and I
will
think
say,
it's brilliant still.
what I will say was, and I guess I will kind of defend, I guess, his artistic choice for this,
Hmm.
because he talks about it in like documentaries of how it's like, he didn't play by the rules in some ways, as other albums did. Like, he talks about how with Ain't No Sunshine, they're like, oh, you gotta have like an intro, you gotta have something like that. He goes right into the song. He was saying like I was really just like, like he goes like I didn't know the rules, I was just breaking them. I was just playing along with it. So for him to like, because there, I don't know if people were like, this might not be the best way to end off an album, because it's like if you're trying to introduce yourself to the public, or if you're trying to get a Grammy, I mean, some people might not think this is a good, like thing. And even if somebody said that, it's like, I don't care, it's like this is how I wrote it. This is how I plan to, have the album. And I think, in some ways it's dark, yes, but I think what I like about it is it's ballsy, to do that. Like
Yeah, I do like that.
it's very ballsy because it's like for somebody who, it is their first album, and I think it shows that like, it's like I don't need a song to end happy. There aren't happy, there's not always going to
Mhm.
be a happy ending. And you know what? Because I consider myself a songwriter, I want to show, what I'm thinking. And, just like, there's a bunch of songs and I think like he was a guy who was like, this song was on my mind, it could have ended with a happier tune, but the way, he was writing it, it was just like it didn't happen that way, it's just like, it's sort of like it's almost like maybe in some ways you could even say maybe it wasn't even planned, in some ways. It's like, and it doesn't sound like it's planned that, ooh, we'll make this the end thing, it's
Right.
just like, because any song in some ways, when you think about it, it's great that that's the last track. I like, but like, there could have been another song that could have always, ended it. It didn't have to be that. I mean, you could have
Right.
had like, what's this? You could have, in some ways, a song that I think could have ended the album if there was something that could have replaced that could have been probably In My Heart, or maybe Hope She'll Be Happier. Well, actually, Hope She'll Be Happier. It does work good as a middle, part, midway.
Yeah, I think so too.
But In My Heart might have actually worked as an ending if they chose any other song. Probably that could have worked well, because the way that ends, like In My Heart, yeah, like the way that it's
Hmm.
like definitely what's cool about it too, the album in general with certain songs, how he uses some, parts where he's going a cappella, and all that, and not really, going into a whole rock sound. He's using these great, he has access to these great musicians, but he's not like, in awe of them either. He's showing them, they're just helping him, but he's guiding them the way through. He's guiding them in the way of how he wants this album. And for that song, for Better Off Dead to be the last song on the album, shows that just as I am, like this is who I am. This is what's on my mind. That's
Right.
really what it is. Like I'm just an assemblyman guy. Like I'm a guy who works in a factory, who
Mhm.
happens to write these, these dark songs that aren't always going to be happy. Aren't always going to be. It might not be what you want. It might not be what you like to listen to on a regular basis. But it's not. But it's almost like too. It's like it's not for you. It's for the artist. An artist shouldn't write for its public. It's an artist
Right. Right.
itself. If the person doesn't get into that, if they're trying to reach, I think it's really forced when you're trying to reach something because of something else, because something works. Like, like you could say as an example, just because the Beatles did I Want to Hold Your Hand doesn't mean like, and you're trying to get a song to be just like that. It's not going to be as good because that's not you. You're trying so hard of what other people think. You can't have that. And in no way, in my mind at all, on this album, am I thinking he gives a fuck of what people think. You know, there's no way I think that that's
Sure.
distinctive.
Well, I suppose it's just a personal thing because I often combine the objective and the subjective, and maybe that's more a subjective thing. But
Right.
look, I still love the song. I just feel like to end off that way, I'm like, oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah.
It just leaves me, oh shit, okay. So that's, but I mean, that was a very elaborate defending point there. So there you go.
But yeah, no. So I guess it's time to go to Still Bill. I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
which I feel like we might. I don't know about you. We might have a little less to say about it, but
Yeah.
it's still great. I don't like it more than Just As I Am, not even close. But yet again, another great album. I mean, right out of the gate with those two albums. I mean, come on.
Well, when you hear Still Bill, I think the thing about that, what I realized was this week when I was going to work,
Mhm.
I was listening, to prepare for the video because I've been listening to those albums like the whole summer. Basically those are the two
Sure.
albums I've been listening to. Um, and well, actually, another. I mean, not that we'll go like too off topic, but two other albums I've listened to him was like the compilation album that kind of went through all the stuff from 71 to 85. But have you listened to the live album he did in 73?
No.
Oh, that's got a great version of Use Me and has got a great version of the hits on there. But yeah, so definitely an album to check out. Yeah, and but anyway, oh yeah, Live at Carnegie Hall. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
think you did mention that to me.
yeah. Oh, okay, I did. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's a great album. And great way to start off with Use Me, which we'll talk about, of course, which is
Oh,
one of my
yeah.
favorite, probably my favorite track on the album.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. No, that's not a bad choice at all.
yeah, yeah, but no. So before I get into the songs, I think the one thing I will say is though, when I was listening to it over and over again, I kind of listened to it at first, both of the albums equally, like amount of times. But this album this week, I just was like, because I was like, okay, on the ride home, I mean, on the ride to work, I'll listen to Just As I Am, and then on the ride home, I'll listen to Still Bill. But I was like, the songs that were in my head were Let It Be and Do It Good. It's like, what, I want to hear those songs. So it's like, I'm going to just like, drive home to that too. And I listened to this album, like, Just As I Am 4 times this weekend. I've only listened to Still Bill maybe once, or I don't even know if I've listened to it all this weekend. I've listened to it. I have a lot to say about the songs on it, but, it's like you said, I think I like Just As I Am more than, Still Bill. But what I will say is a great song is the opening track. I think the
Yeah.
opening track is actually better than Harlem. I think, in my opinion, I do.
Oh, I can't go that far, but I do
Oh,
I do enjoy it.
I think Lonely Town, Lonely Street. The
Mhm.
funk on it is just the way the guitar picks it, like the bump, 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 yeah, like that, and the way if you ever hear him do it live, how he starts because like the intro starts like with the full band kind of, but when he does it live, he just has the guitar. And I mean, my favorite line on it, like, if dancing doesn't lead to romance, and you might as well be born with 2 left feet. You know,
That's great.
that line, like, you might as well be born with two. And like the way he sings it live is just as good. But like, oh god, like even the string arrangements on it, and just like it's probably one of his most funkiest songs. Definitely bringing that 70s funk into it. For 1972, definitely a good way to get introduced. Again, just showing it's like I'm still back. I still got stuff to say. Still Bill. Kind of like I'm
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Still Bill. It's kind of like a continuation of the first title, Just As I Am, and then like I'm still who I am. So yeah, like that, I the thing I've just been saying, I just said that on the spot, like I just thought of that like now, really.
And you know what his third album is called, right?
No, I don't. What was his third album?
Adjustments.
What's it was called?
Adjustments with a plus sign.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so you might be onto something.
yeah,
I had
maybe.
to make some changes, I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh,
You know?
out of curiosity, do you know what his fourth album was called? Oh, just that.
No, I don't.
Okay, but no, but what is your take on the opening track though?
Oh, I think from what I remember, I do think I love this one, and as you said, that line is just so clever. I mean, you can't help but
It's
see
just
yet again his humor shining through. I think this is something you could have had as opposed to do it good. But
And
regardless,
the way he sings it on this album, like with the way he sings, like you might as well be born with
Mhm.
left feet, and like the way he like kind of like doesn't really, but like live, he like really like emphasizes it more, puts more real like into it, like where it goes like you might as well be born with two left feet, like just
Mhm.
like the way he really just like has that raspy sound, really just like the soul just gets more and more heavier. And then I think yeah, do you have anything else to say about this song, or do you want to move on to
It's been a while since I've heard it. It's been
right?
like over a year, so
Oh wow.
I'm gonna just try to catch up to your pace and yeah. But I do know these songs. I do love this album. So
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, I definitely see it's on your list. So yeah, it's
yes,
you're
most
yeah.
definitely.
I can put that on the link below if you want. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and of course my YouTube channel, which
yeah, of
if you
course.
want to check out anything, gotta check that out.
Yeah,
So
no, but so like I think like "Let Me in Your Life," the second track, it's definitely a very beautiful song. Very somber. Has more of a mellow feel than any song he did on "Just as I Am." A little bit more like kind of, I guess, authentic in some ways. If he's the one to, like, I need someone, let me love you, or like all that, like, let me in your life, and like if he's gone away, like I
mm.
was there when he hurt you, so why
Dude,
should I pay?
I love that line. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah.
No. It's a great one too, and it's just like I think it shows too. I guess from anybody who has had maybe like experience of going from one relationship to the next, of where there's like maybe there was an issue with that. It's like, listen, I'm not that guy. Like
Right.
I wasn't the guy who if you were somebody who was in an abusive relationship, like you kind of got to prove yourself. It's like like it's funny, how we're talking about it now. I haven't had this prepared before. Like this is like kind of just coming on the spot, and I'm not saying this like I'm not trying to flex or anything. I'm just saying the reason why. No, I'm not trying to flex. Like, oh, I'm thinking about this all on there.
Yeah.
No, it's just it doesn't like occur to you always. Like thinking about it, like I'm not like always thinking like, oh, this is what the lyrics mean, until like subconsciously, you're talking about it, and then you're like, oh, wait a second. Oh, that's what he's saying. Or like,
Right.
oh, it's just like it just naturally comes in the conversation because it's like it's an earworm now. That's really what it is. That's how it's coming in with me, or like how I'm seeing it.
Sure. No, and I don't know, man. I mean, that's cool. Why I like the more natural flowing conversation. As long as we know what we're talking about, that's all that
Yeah,
matters.
exactly. That's the only thing. As long as we don't go on some kind of weird rant.
No, man. But
Yeah.
I will ask. I do want to say,
Yeah.
who is he and what is he to you? I think absolutely brilliant, though.
Okay.
I love that
I
song.
gotta say, even though it's on that compilation album,
Yes.
I don't love it as much as like the other songs. Like it's not. I gotta say, it's not my favorite. I've listened to it like a good amount of times, and every time I listen to it, I don't think it's a bad song at all. It's just like it's never like it. Just for me, it doesn't seem like it goes anywhere. It just seems like it stays in one place to me.
Really?
And it's just like it's there doesn't seem that much emotion on it as something like Lonely Town or Lonely Street or Let Me in Your Life. Just in like
Oh,
I'm not trying to
no emotion.
you know
No,
like, and
I have
if,
to
if
disagree.
you like I want to hear your counter argument for that of what you
Yeah.
think about it. So let me shut up and let me hear
I mean, just dude, the way he describes like this encounter, like on the street, where he's like saying, "A man we passed just tried to stare me down. When I looked at you, you looked at the ground." First off, so brilliant. Yet again,
yeah,
telling the story like
yeah
there's
who
something
was
between them that but he doesn't have to say that yet, and But I just love who is he and what is he to you, something like that. It's so brilliant. But I just love the way this yet again how the story unfolds, and yet again another brilliant line. And now when I add the sum of you and me, I get confused and keep coming up with three.
yeah
It's just so like it really does feel like this is something where he's trying to genuinely figure this out, and he's trying to get to, those jealous emotions creep in, and I feel like that's what really drives a song. So when you say he's not as emotional as the other songs, I do have to disagree, because a lot of this, I think, is driven by not only curiosity but jealousy, and I think that really comes through the lyrics.
I will say, like, when I mean emotionally, I just don't hear it in the voice. I will say,
Oh, okay.
have you, when you've talked about it, I will say I didn't. You know how I said earlier, when I was talking about Lemmy in your life, like that, it was just coming up more on the spot, just thinking about it subconsciously, of like, oh, that's what it is. Like, you hear the lyrics, but you don't really sometimes put the two to two together, because sometimes, like, when you're listening to music, you're doing other things. You're driving. You might be cooking. You
Mm.
might be cleaning, whatever. Or jogging or and all that. So you don't always, like, you hear the lyrics, you know what they're saying, but you don't. Like, it's like you know what they're saying, but you don't know what they're saying. Like, you don't know why they're saying, or like what the context sometimes is, unless you really like are paying full attention. So when you say that, it's like, oh yeah, that's what that song's about. Who is
Yeah.
when, like, right when he says, like, yeah, a man we passed just walking down, and then when I looked at you, you looked at the ground. It's like, that's why he's saying the line, "Who is he and what is he to you?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And well, also, like, a lot of times when I listen to music, I just like lie on my back, and that's all I focus on. Or
Yeah.
I'm like putting cards away in a binder, so like,
You said that, Nathaniel,
yeah.
you really opened my mind there. It's like, oh my god, yeah.
I guess I did my job good.
Yeah, no, you made me think of it differently. Not to say that, like, it's still not my, like, the song
Mhm.
that I find the catchiest, but I do think it definitely, like, has, like, it's definitely considered, like, if you watch the Withers documentary they did, like, over 13 years ago,
Oh, I
where it
get,
was a
yeah.
celebration of his music, that is one of the first songs they play. So it's definitely a song that sticks with people, or is a song that you can definitely have in the system, and always, like, kind of like, yeah, this song works for me.
Sure, no, and I hope I did bring a new perspective to it.
Yeah.
'Cause I love to hear that, man. That's great.
No,
But
because
I will say, not as brilliant as Use Me, which, I mean,
yeah,
come on, such a
let's talk about Use Me.
yes. Let's.
I honestly, I feel like we're gonna go forever talking about this, because there's so much I can say about Use
Oh
Me.
no.
Let's go. Let me hear what you have to say first, and then I'll chime in.
Oh, this song is one of the most brilliant on the entire album, and I think, and obviously one of his absolute classic songs. I feel like most people who maybe not even be too familiar with Bill Withers are aware of this song,
Yeah,
its existence. But I think just the way, how he knows he's getting, like, used,
yeah,
but fine with it because he loves spending time with this woman. Very, very toxic, I gotta say, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. You get this perspective. But I think another thing is too, like, when he's like talking about going to the party or whatever,
oh yeah,
and he's like saying, I don't know if I should be here. Like, you get this sense of, like, there's like a sense of classism in the song, and
yeah,
I just think that's a really interesting angle. It's not like he talks about uh high class people, and you act real rude to me.
yeah,
He doesn't necessarily say it's about classism,
yeah.
but that's what he's talking about, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. Just those undertones in this song.
Yeah, yeah, that part too. But I think this song represents a lot of relationships. I think because the real, I think, bottom line of what he's going for in romance is that love in no ways is perfect, and the people you end up spending time with or having a great feeling for, and will always think about it even after you're no longer with them, might have not been the best person to you, might have treated you like shit and you didn't know it.
Yeah. Or
Like,
he does know it and he just willingly
like, you don't
accepts it.
wanna admit it. You don't want to, you don't want to admit it, or you want to tell people, no, you're wrong. It's like, and I think what it has to do with is, in some ways, you can go into the discussion of, like, where this could be, about a relationship, or about something that you want to get into a relationship, but, like, either the girl or the guy is just taking you into, like, the friend zone in some ways. It's sort of like you can relate it even to that scenario, even though in this case it is about a relationship. It's about also too that, like, this person's not into you fully for you. You know, they want something out of you. And from
Yeah,
what you're saying is like, so it's almost like there's undertones of that they are different classes. So you do then wonder like if she's richer than him, then what is she then using him for in some
for
way?
sex, you know.
Yeah, well, that well, see, that could you could use that too, but I feel like for me, in some ways, I guess the way I see it is that like you're using it for something that maybe like I don't know, like you're using it for maybe he's generous or maybe you're looking for a man to support you and all that. So I'm like maybe that's the way it's going. Like because sometimes I feel like the stereotype, and I'm just saying this as that this is a stereotype. It's not that that's it. I believe this, so it's just like, but I feel like a stereotype that comes around in relationships when they talk about using is that the girl will use the guy for money and the guy will use the girl for sex, and all that. I think that's
Okay.
basically a big thing, like when you see those couples with the big age difference where the woman might be going to the older guy because he's got a lot of money and the older guy might be going to the young woman because he wants to have a lot of like good sex, really. That's really like what it kind of seems like to me.
Mm.
And I think the lines I like is that he's really like like he does a good job at unfolding the story and all that. And with the
As always.
coming in with the introduction where he goes like he's talking about his friends, just the people in his inner circle feel they need to tell me that, like like I like that too, how he emphasizes the word, how he like how he specifically uses the word feel. It's their important duty, it's their important duty, how he's talking about that they're trying to tell me that all you want to do is use me. And I like how he talks about like in the chorus where he goes like I want to spread the news that if it feels that good to be used, just keep on using me until you use me up. And I think it's like he's realizing it's like I don't care if she's using me for something. You know what? I like this person, or like this is working for me at the moment. So it, she can be with this might not be the most healthy thought, but she can be with me until she's tired of me. That's basically what he's saying, kind of.
Mm.
Like she can be with me until she doesn't want anything to do with me anymore. So it's like he's totally fine with that. He's accepting that. Like he's saying that to his friends. It's like like I want to spread the news that it's okay to be used. Like that's all right. And I will say before I go into my favorite part of the song, watch him do it live. I think is it the Great Whistle Test or something. It's like the drummer James Gadson, like the way he is hitting those notes, like where he's doing the fills, the whole drum pattern, and where it just like the live performance where he's just smiling the hell out of it, and he's just like going like and where Bill Withers just going ha ha, I want to spread, and all you hear is just the drums and Bill Withers' voice in that performance while there goes to that line, and you just see him like smiling and just like being so happy. And like honestly, it works so well too. Like I love that so much. And there are comments on YouTube, even when like going back to a little bit even to like Sunshine, the first album, is like James Gadson, the way he performs, like he just has this smile on his face. So people write, it's like he basically looks like the guy who knows the funniest joke and is not revealing it to the world. It's like,
Right.
and that's kind of what it is. It's like when you hear him do like use me, when you see it, like there's certain parts where it's like, yo, this guy loves his job. He loves, the song that he's drumming to. But my favorite line of the song is the ending, where and the live performance of it, he does it twice, because it's just he really like just shows how important it is, the ending, like how it's probably his favorite part of the song. And I think it kind of reveals even more of who he is, where he goes like talking about you using people, it all depends on what you do, it ain't too bad you using me because I sure am using you. Like I just love
Mm.
how it's like it kind of changes, it's
Flips
like
it a little bit.
where he talks about
Mm.
like she can use me and all that, and he's realizing he's just as guilty. That's what he's revealing himself. Like I'm just as guilty, because it's like you're not. It's not just you that's getting something out of this
Right.
relationship. I'm getting something out of it too.
There's a lot of layers to it. I think
Yeah, and
that's what
like,
makes it such a brilliant
you
song.
know, without him fully saying it and spoon feeding it that he's using her for sex because he says to do the things you do. Yeah, like
Mm.
yeah, like and he says that and he says it again as a wink, wink, like to do the things you do, like the way yeah. But oh god, and then we get to the next well-known song, and
Maybe his most well-known song, I would say.
yeah, like no, um, oh my
Dude, I love the
that
piano.
goes from the guy that goes from a song about heartbreaking relationship, toxicity in a relationship, focusing on a family member, and then going on to just a song about pure friendship.
Yeah,
Of like really changing the mood. Like, because that's the thing. Each of those songs, each of his main songs, has a distinct mood, and this song is really just of like when you hear it and just the way he just goes into that little the way he sings it sounds a little monotone, but it works. Like
yeah.
sometimes in our life, like
All and
he doesn't
pain.
have that much emotion in his voice, but he does. That's if you know what I mean.
Well, dude, especially when he goes, "Lean on me
Yeah,
when you are strong."
goes,
Yeah,
there
it's
he is, and it's like there's that soul that we got a chance to know, and like please swallow your pride, like for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on, and then like the clapping, like you just call on me,
come home, brother.
yeah,
When you need a hand, we all need somebody to lean on. I mean, who doesn't love that, man?
yeah, yeah.
So classic,
Yeah, no,
so
that's like,
iconic.
oh my god, I even want to add to that and just sitting it up now. It's just oh great, because also too, this song I think can work for the crazy times that we're in now, even too. I feel like
Yeah, sure.
related to certain stuff, even like the Black Lives Matter protest of 2020, people were using that song because also too he died like 2 months before all that happened, and John Fogerty even with his kids performed that song
Mm,
as a representing that all the craziness of what was going on, and I think for him to just use that song in it like but I think it just shows that like this is a song that people need to hear. This is a song, it's an anthem, it's an anthem of peace, it's an anthem of that things will be okay, you don't need to, and I even think it's like you can sort of say that it's a little harsh, the line of him saying, but if we're wise. And like, we know, like, I think that is a little like, in some ways, it's like, oh, it's kind of like, just like, if we're wise, we'll know the end. And I don't, this is a little bit of a darker tone. And I'm not saying that he's saying that, like, suicide is weak and all that in some ways of like what he's trying to say. But like, and I want to be careful how I say it. I don't want to say it like as in a harsh way, but like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think what he's mentioning is that, when people say that, like, like, but if we're wise, maybe it's like sometimes we irrationally don't always think things through. He's not saying like there are people who are stupid who do like things that are life changing tragedies. It's just that, like, but like, if we think a moment, if we stop before we get to that irrational thought, or before we let our irrational thoughts lead us more, then we can know that there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's like people can speak from experience, of having a bad day at school, a bad day at work. It's like this is how it feels now. We have like, we can address it now, but will it always feel like this? No. And that's what I think it is. And I think, it shows that, when you're feeling like this, you can count on me, I can be that friend for you. I can, it's gonna be okay.
yeah.
It's like it almost, he covered "Let It Be," but it's almost like the Beatles song "Let It Be." It's gonna be all right. Like things will be,
Oh,
okay, you know.
all right. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
so good.
yeah. And then
Okay.
yeah. So what we got? The next track, the way it changes to it to more of a, not to say that's a happy, not to say it's a happy, that's not a happy song. It's just not like it's. I remember as a kid thinking the song was definitely moody. The same way "Ain't No Sunshine." It's like kind of like it's eerie vibe in a way, even though it is like it's got a positive message. It's
Yeah.
just like, the way the melody, is, and the way the song, stays at a specific that like, tone. It doesn't really, it's like you don't see any, you don't feel the happiness as much as you do with the song "Kissing My Love." I feel like.
Oh, I see what you mean. I mean, it is in major though, as opposed to "Ain't No Sunshine," which I think makes it a little bit happier. You know, you hear those, popular chords. No, but dude, this song's so funky. It's when you're kissing my love. It's just like, oh,
And then the line repeating, put your foot on the rock, put your foot on the, yeah, no, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it isn't like
Foot on the rock.
it might not be as powerful as something like "Lean on Me" or "Use Me," but man, it is so much fun. This song is great.
Well, it makes sense. It was the third single. I mean, it wasn't
Oh
as,
yeah,
I mean, it shows like how you like. I mean, you kind of just like kind of described it without really saying it. Of that, like it's a song like that. Like it's a hit. Like it's a song that stands out. Like it is a single, but it's not as powerful as what "Use Me" and "Lean on Me" is, and it kind of shows that even in the charts that it wasn't as like a successful song, but it's a song that does stand out.
yeah. No,
And
I agree
yeah,
completely.
and the funk on it, like like it really is like happy. Like I close my eyes and see a different city, and like just like like she's so good at what she does. All she wants to do is kiss and hug, and heart, like my heart thumping and skipping, and you feel the
Hard
heart thumping and
skip it.
the beer with the
Yeah.
beat of it, and it works well, And I think in this song too, and this album as well, is he had more of because this was the band he used in the live album that he did at Carnegie Hall. Not that to say that he didn't have great musicians in like in the first album. They were all star musicians, but this time he had more of a band together. This was more of like his his group. Having like people like James Gadsden, Melvin Dunlap. I forget the other. I think Melvin Dunlap was the bass player on it, and like really like kind of going into it, and it works well. And anything else you got to say on it? I think.
No, I do love it though, and yeah, it's just such an infectious track. I can't help but love it.
And then so we're going into now. I think it's I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know. And I like that line. I like that song because sometimes we just don't know about stuff, and we sometimes just don't know. That it really is.
Hmm.
Whether it's love, whether it's friendship, whether it's what the outcome's going to be. It's like sometimes it's like you want to know, but sometimes it's like you just don't know. And I think for him to just fully say that in a line like I just don't know, I just don't, and like I like the way it starts off in a very like kind of sweet, like I can feel a lot of imagery of where it's like it's a relationship in my mind. It's like I feel like it's a relationship that has been through a lot, and they're not at a downfall, but their peak is trying to keep their relationship alive. Of whether they're going through hard, whether it's adapting in age, or whether it's just they're going through hard times, and both people in the relationship are doing the best to keep it together. And it's like that's the thing. I think it works, but sometimes it's like you're not gonna know what happens in life. You really
Right.
just don't know, and I think that's what it means to me, at least.
Sure. Well, actually, that reminds me. Have you listened to Inner Visions by Stevie Wonder? That album.
Not all the way through. I know certain songs on it. Yeah.
That's well. First off, that's a perfect album. You got to check it out.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of a song off of there, like what you're saying. All in Love is Fair.
Okay.
Which kind of like talks about the same thing, the uncertainty of it. This song though, I think doesn't draw me in as much as a lot of the others. Like it's decent, but I don't know. I think you make some good points, obviously. But I don't know. This one just never grabbed me lyrically like some of the other songs on this
Yeah.
album.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will say for me, I think it is one of his good, sophisticated lyrics. It's not like it's definitely a better sophisticated lyric than something like "Do It Good," of course.
Yeah, yeah, I'll give you that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, no, it's definitely that. I think in some ways, I actually you're probably not gonna agree with me on this, but I like the lyrics more on this than who is he and what is he to you? I mean, like that's like how.
Oh, I might. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
disagree.
no, I knew you were going to disagree with me on that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's good. I mean, I think that we're at least talking about like how like what you call it, like we both have different points of view of this album, and that's like what really music is. It's a universal language, and you're gonna see, and it's all about interpretation of like you're gonna interpret something different than the way I'll interpret it, or it's a certain song's gonna hit you a certain way that like that you love and it may not have meant nothing to me, and or vice versa. You know, there's a song that I might have loved, and it might have meant nothing to you. You know, so it's like it has to do with that as well of like figuring out, you know, what works, you know, and all that. Like what's gonna work for me? What's gonna work for like how am I gonna love this song? Like how am I gonna really get into it? You
Well, I'll tell you what does work, Tom, is Another Day to Run.
know? Yeah.
Woo, which I gotta say, believe it or not, is my favorite song on this album. It's always some of the more obscure cuts on Bill Withers albums that end up being my favorites, but
It's not
man, is this one powerful.
I can't say
Very,
it's
very
my
dark.
favorite, but like it's definitely I see it as like kind of like if I don't know was a single, I could see that also being like I could see that those songs both being like a double A side, you know, single, you
Mm,
know. That like that to me is a both of those songs are like double A sides in my opinion.
sure. No, I mean this song deserves all the attention, man. And just it's so dark. Like not only he's just talking about this guy who's kind of directionless, and then he talks about Tony who's got his arm filled up with
Yeah,
dope, and
yeah.
like doesn't he watch him like OD on the street I mean, it's some rough stuff,
And he
man. It
dreams
it is
about
some
a
tough
family,
shit.
like mine too. Like and he dreams about a family.
He wanna yeah, tell me why he wanna get high enough to die, and then you get this really, really powerful instrumental, just really upbeat. I mean, just drives the song, the chaos going on, the way he's describing the situation, man.
To get off too topic with that, but I think that also represents certain musicians or some people young to the point where they want to have this fantasy of partying hard, living life to the fullest when you're young, and then dying young. You know, in some ways, it's like
Yeah.
you've heard of even with musicians. Some people, I think, you know, craved, you know, with Robert Johnson, who died at 27. Some people, there's a lot, I don't know if you ever heard of it called a Robert Johnson fantasy, you know, of
Mm,
doing the best you can while you're young and dying young, you know,
sure, sure. I mean,
Li-
yeah, you could say
living
that about
in a small amount of time and doing all you can, and then just, you know, not seeing the rest of life, you know, just
like Hendrix or,
yeah, like I mean, they call it the 27 Club for a reason, I think. You know?
Right. No, you're right, man. And I just, dude, I just want to say about this song real quick though. Just like that line where he's like saying he dreams about a valley, but the poor boy lives in an alley. It's like
Yeah.
filled with the papers that's thrown away. Like, damn, man. Like that
Yeah.
is this image. The imagery conjures up here is so brutal, very visceral, very affecting.
I
You
think
know.
also it's a harsh reality to realize that it maybe in some ways, you know, another day to run is you're focusing on maybe like your daydreams or your fantasies, and you dream about this stuff, but you don't accept the reality of what you're
Yeah.
actually in, and you're never going to get to the place you want until you accept that your life isn't like, you know, you might like, let's say like, you know, if you're a musician or an actor and you're trying to like if you're a musician and you're not making anywhere but you're still comparing yourself to John Lennon, you know, and like, you know, saying that you're just as good and you're doing everything he did at his age, and you're not admitting that to yourself, you're gonna stay in that struggling place, you know, because you're in a fantasy and you're not real waking up to the world, and you're gonna ruin your life without really admitting like what, you know, it might not be the way you want it, but sometimes you have to just accept that, you know, I think in some way.
Yeah, and fix the problems at hand before you go on to anything else, really. I mean, no, that's what I think is so powerful about it. It speaks to a lot of people, but it also is somewhat of a cautionary tale, about Tony too, and seeing what the negative, what if you go down the wrong path, what that could be like. And very, very brilliant song. One of the best of his career, I would even say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. I guess I wouldn't go too far with that, but for yeah, like, but no, definitely a good song. It's definitely something I like. I think of when I think of Withers, with music. And something that is another great example of his songwriting ability. But for me, I would have to say, "I Don't Want You on My Mind" is a great single like song that really could have been a single too, and
Mm,
just as good as something like as Kissing My Love, and I love it more. And this song I definitely love more than Who Is He and What Is He to You, because I think when
all comes back to that song.
it always come back to me, I don't mean to, but it's just like no, because I think the reason why I mention that is when I hear the compilation album, they mention like they focus on 5 songs from Still Bill, and that's Use Me, Lean on Me, Kissing My Love, I Don't Want You on My Mind, and Who Is He and What Is He to You, and I'm like, well, if they're gonna, there's a lot of songs on that already, and it's like, for me, it's like I cut, I Don't Want You in My Mind, and just go like, I mean, I cut, Who Is He and What Is He to You, because I feel like I don't want you in my mind is just such a great song,
Mhm.
because it's just like it's bluesy. It's like got like kind of like maybe like a Sonny Boy Williamson or just like one of those like Muddy Waters or whatever type of blues feel to it. And it's a different type of song for Withers because it's bluesy. It's just like R&B. It's not going. The tempo isn't as fast. It's not over the place. It's not a funky song like Use Me or Kissing My Love. It's not as emotional as Let Me in Your Life or Lean on Me. It's just at one place, it's got like, not that much is happening, but you hear it really going on, and even like the ending, like ooh, oh, yeah, like that. It's just like, oh, this is interesting, and I love the line like, "I don't want you on my mind." Like I find that it shows a sign of weakness. Oh, it's like
Mhm.
yeah, on my mind all the time, and like I believe it shows a sign of weakness and like all that. I just think those lines work well of like I just wake up knowing that I got to do without you, and I think it's another song that can relate to how people feel in relationships or
Mhm.
or love interests, or just of how what we have on our mind at times or what we desire can sometimes be painful because we might not get what we want in return. And I think melody represents that. It's a blues kind of thing. It's like it's not a whole like a bump bump a bump bump, but it's like but it is a song that is strictly I got the blues because this is how I'm feeling.
Mhm. I just think for me, it doesn't necessarily. I think it might be a little too brief and lyrically so, because I
Mhm.
think it's like the same verse twice. Which I mean, obviously, okay. Well, what about "Ain't No Sunshine When She's
Yeah,
Gone"? Well, I mean, that's just such a classic Bill Withers song. I
yeah,
can't you can't not think that's iconic. I don't know. This song just isn't one that particularly grabs me. But then again, you always have some point that makes it like, okay, I can see where you're appreciating this so much, and I love that for you. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. No, no, and I
Yeah.
think the one thing I will say about this song is like too that like I like songs like the way it is too of just like how it goes slowly, but it also too is that like it's going somewhere because it's something he's got something to say. It is. I think for me the lyrics work well because it's being true to yourself. It's being true of how you're feeling